All right. So the next thing that we want to do with this is that we want to put in what are known as sparkline charts. So sparkline charts are used, they were new in Excel 2013, I believe. It might have been 2010 is when they first came in. So they're fairly new. And what they allow you to do is they allow you to create a little mini chart inside of your spreadsheet. Because one of the things that that Microsoft realized was that people were making lots of charts but they weren't using like full-on extensive charts. They just wanted to put in a little teeny tiny chart. And that's what the sparkline chart really allows you to do. It allows you to put in a simple way of showing trends. And so the chart that they want us to do is if I go into I4, because that's where our revenue is. And what they want us to do is they want us to then put in a sparkline chart. And to create the spotline chart, it's under Insert. So you click onto the Insert tab, and then it's in the Sparklines group. And the sparkline that we are going to do is a sparkline line. So we're going to click on the sparkline line. And the first thing that you'll notice is that the location range is written as being in I4. But you'll notice that it doesn't just say I4. What does it say? It's an absolute reference, because it's saying that the data are going to be, the location of where the sparkline is going to be placed is in that specific spot. And the data that they want us to do, so I click onto the data range so that I can now enter in the data. And the data that they want are from all of the revenue. So from B4 to G4. And that's going to be the data that are going to go into the revenue chart. So that when I click OK, I get this little trend showing that April was not so great, May was a little bit better, but still not so great. June was pretty good. July was great. August was going down a little bit. September's down a little bit. So it goes zoop, voop. You have to add sound effects otherwise. And then we want to do, we want to have more charts. Oh, no, I guess first of all, they want us to change the color of the chart. So if I click onto the style is currently this chart, and they want me to change it to this chart. So I don't know why they want me to, it's not really that noticeable of a difference. If I really wanted to make it more noticeable, I could do like black, or I could do like, you know, pink. My daughter would like it if I did pink, but I'm gonna do the blue so I can see it. Something that you can see. Any color is fine. And then I want to have the I'm going to use the fill handle to fill handle the charts down so that I can see my charts. To the operating income. So, you know, like for example, on I9, it's going to go flat line at 0, and then all of a sudden whole bunches, because it goes from 0, 0, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. So that's the sparkline chart. You can change the style of the sparkline chart. So if I click onto my chart and I go into sparkline tools, this is a line chart. there is also a column chart that shows it as a column. Well, it would ask for location if you were inserting a new one, but I don't want to insert a new one. And I can also, in the Sparkline column chart, there are lots of other things that you can demonstrate. You can demonstrate the high point and the low point and the negative points if there were any. You can indicate the first and the last. There's all sorts of really cool number thingies that you can show in your chart. There's also a win-loss. In this case, win-loss, they're all wins because we didn't lose money in any of the months. A win-loss would show negative if there were negative money, but they're all positive numbers, so they're all going to be positive except for the months where there was no bonus, in which case it'll be 0. So win-loss is not a really useful one in this case, but the column chart is. So I'm going to keep it at the column chart. And you have to click on the chart. So if I click onto the chart and then I click onto Sparkline Tools, I can then go into design. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is on page 164, we're going to make it look pretty. So to make it look pretty, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to go and follow the rules that they are stating. So B4 to H16. So B4 to H16, they're going to have us do our numbers. So they want us to do on rows 4, 6, 9, 14, and 16, the currency style. So that means the stuff that's at the top is going to be currency style. So they want the row 4 from B to H. They want that to be in currency. So we'll click on a currency. Currency. They want currency, not accounting. And then they want 6 to also be in currency. And then they want 9 to be in currency. $14 and $16. Yep. 14 and 16 as well, currency. And then comma style for everything else. So that the first and the last of every group is going to be in currency and everything else is going to be in comma. And then the next thing they want us to do is they want us to go up to A1. So if I go up to A1, they want A1 to be size 36. And they want A2 to be size 18. And then they want A1 to I2 They want from A1 to I2. They want to be green. So let's see here. They want the fill color to be dark green. So if I go into the fill color and I do dark green accent 3, which is this one, the top one, dark green accent 3. And then they want the font color to be white. So it'll look like that. Oh, and they also want it to be bold. Yeah. Yes.
What was the font size for the 6-month projection?
18 point. And then what they want is they want revenue. They want revenue. First they want row 3 or row 3. They want row 3 to be the heading 2 style to chart. And then they want A4 to be green and white.
Heading 3 or just
Heading 3. Row 3 is heading, no, row 3 is heading 2. A3 to I3 is heading 2 style. Page 167. Heading 2. And I believe they want A4 to A25. I think they want that to be bold. Pretty sure they want that to be bold. Yeah. And then they want A6 to I6, no, to H6. A6 to H6, they want that to be in the total style. And they want total expenses to also be in the total style. And they also want operating income to be in the total style. So there's another really cool way that I want to show you for copying styles. And that is to use the Format Painter. What Format Painter does is Format Painter lets you take the current style from whatever it is that you're on. So in this case, if I'm in A14, it'll take the style that's in A14. And if I click on the Format Painter, you'll notice that A14 now has the marching ants marching around A14. That indicates that I've selected it. And what the Format Painter does is it copies the format from whatever it's copying from to wherever it is I'm copying it to. So if I want row 14 to be the same as row 16, I could go to row 14, use Format Painter, and copy it to row 16. And that will do the same thing. But of course, I need to select the whole thing. Otherwise, it's going to lose it. So I actually want to select all A14 to H14 and then do my format painter, because otherwise I'll lose my other format styles. And then what they want is they want the revenue style to be copied to the gross margin and the operating income. So again, I could go to revenue and use the format painter and click on to gross margin. And then I could go on to gross margin, click on a format painter and go down to operating income. And then they will be greened the same way. Yeah? It should be blue. It should be on cell style. It should be blue. The blue choice, well, the total part will be black, but the lines around it will be blue. You need to make sure that you're in the slice theme. If you're not in the slice theme, that could be the issue. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to make this entire area be green and 8-point and white. So I'm going to click on to the fill color of green, the font color of white, and then they want this to be size 8. So I'll make it size 8. And then they want what if assumptions to be in italic and underlined. Oh, it already is bolded. And when I'm done with this, I want to save what I've done so far. So I'm going to save this as the Mark Branham, what's the name of the company? Froyo to go. 6-month projection. Okay, so if you don't have the formatting done, I want you to stop because the formatting is really unimportant. What is important is understanding how to do the charts and how to do the protection. So those are two things that are more important than the colors. But this is how it should look when you're done. But the first thing that we want to do is we want to add a clustered column chart to this worksheet. So in order to do that, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to select the categories that are going to make up our chart. And the categories are from A3 down to down to G, A3 to G3. So we want nothingness, and then April, May, June, July, August, and September. And then we want to also select the content. So you need to hold down your control key and select from A9 down to G13. So that I've selected both the months and the data. Yes. On the Mac, it is, I believe it's option. No, it's not. It's command. It's command. So on the Mac, you would select A3 to G3, hold down the command key, and select from A9 to G13. So first select A3 to G3, and then hold down either the command if you're on a Mac or control if you're on a PC, A9 to G13. Once you have selected those two groups, what we want to do is we want to click on to insert, and then we want to click on to recommended charts. And when we click on to recommended charts, it should show the clustered column chart. And if it doesn't, then you want to select the clustered column chart, and click OK. And we'll have then the clustered column chart that looks kind of like this. The first thing that I want to do now that I've inserted this chart is I want to put it onto its own sheet. So again, to put it onto its own sheet, I'm going to click on to move chart, and I'm going to say move it to its own sheet, and I'm going to click OK. So that I have my chart on its own sheet. Move chart to new sheet. And the chart title is pretty lame because the chart title is chart title. So I'm going to change that by double clicking in it. And we're going to call this the 6-month projected expenses. And they're saying to make it in italic. I really recommend against making it in italic because italics is a bad idea. But if you want to make it in italics, you can make it in italics. But generally, italics indicates, underlined is bad. Italics is good. Underline is bad because underline indicates that it's a link, but it's not a link. But they're telling us to do underline, so I don't know. Anyway, we want to modify this chart. So to modify the chart, there are a couple of different things that you can do to modify the chart. One of the things that we can modify the chart with is we can modify the chart elements and the chart styles and the chart filters. Now, quite frankly, what they're going to have us do is they're going to have us do a whole bunch of stuff, and then they're going to have us undo all of it. So I actually would recommend perhaps that you not actually do any of these, but instead just watch me do them so that you can understand what it is that they're doing, so that if you decide later on that you want to do this, you'll understand later on what you might want to do. But pretty much everything that they're about to do are really, really, really bad ways of doing it. In a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about PowerPoint. And one of the things that I'm going to show you in PowerPoint is what not to do in PowerPoint. And one of the big things to not do in PowerPoint is to not put in charts that have all of the data pieces with all of the labels marked everywhere, because it's just a terrible idea. So that said, I'm going to do it. Don't do this in real life. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some data labels. So to add the data labels, I'm going to go into the chart elements, and I'm going to go into my data labels, and I'm going to turn on the data labels. So by doing that, it's turned on these data labels. So now they all have these numbers written all around them. If I click onto this side, I can change where they're located. So I could make them a little bit, you know, like, I mean, that's totally clear, right? Yeah, no. The other thing that I could do is I could put in the data table so that you have the table. And the joke that is in the video that I'm going to show you is it's real clear, and you know, it's totally not clear. Yeah, to them it's clear. Error bars. What error bars do is error bars allow you to put in what the percentage might be in the error, and it shows you where it would be in relationship to the error. Grid lines actually I think are kind of useful because they show you, they make it a little bit easier to see the grid. So that can be useful. I usually turn them off, but you know, legends. So right now the legend is at the bottom. That's what this is. If I change it to the top, it goes up to the top. If I change it to the left, it goes to the left. If I go into more options, I could have even more options that are available to me. Right, top right, bottom, whatever it is that I might want to do. I think they're on the, bottom. The other thing that that we can do on this is we can change the style. So I can change what the style is on it by going in and just changing what the style choices are. Yeah, different style choices are sometimes a little bit easier to read, but not always. Let's see here. The other thing I could do is I could change what the data are. So by going into the filter, I can change what the data are that are being visible in the chart. So if I decide that I want to hide the bonus, I could remove bonus and then click on to apply, and then it won't show the bonus anymore. Or I could remove commission and click on to apply, and it will no longer show the commission. Or I could add the bonus back, and it would add the bonus back. I could choose to only show, you know, just April. I could say, don't show anything and only show April. So if I apply now, it'll only show April. Or only show April and May. Or only show April, May, and June. Or again, select everything, and it'll show everything. The point is that there's all sorts of cool things that you can set up to do. And in the book, they go through all of the choices that you can do, starting on page 172 and going all the way through 178, at which point they say, you decide that the data labels on the bars are distracting and add no value to the chart. You decide to remove the data labels and filters so that all the expense data is once again visible. So basically it undoes everything that you did, which is why I said, don't really do it because, you know, it's just going to go back. Questions? Well, you walk it back, and so for example, if I click on to chart options and I say I want to get rid of the data labels, I would uncheck data labels and untick grid lines and so on. Yeah, you have to remember what you did, which is why I said just don't do it, because as far as Joe's concerned, he's going to look at it and it should be the way that it was to begin with. All right. The next thing is they want us to change our change what our sheet names are. So they want chart 1 should be called the clustered column chart. Well, I know because I actually didn't undo everything. And then in sheet, we want to call this the 6-month financial projections. And I'm going to move my projections so that they're at the beginning, because I usually like to have my data be the first thing and my chart be the second thing. Yes. Yes. Yes, changing the data in the data sheet will update the chart. Speaking of that, that's one thing that we want to do. But before we do that, there is one other really important thing I want to show you, and that is freeze panes. Freeze panes is one of the coolest things that you can do in Excel, and one of the most frustrating things that you can do in Excel. And the reason that freeze panes is frustrating is that you always are freezing the pane after or to the right of whatever you think it is. So here's what I mean. So if you're doing something else, I want you to stop, look up at my screen. And what I want to do is I want to make it so that column A stays put. And when I scroll to the left, column A stays there and everything else moves. That's what I want. So in order to do that, I actually don't go on A and choose freeze panes and choose freeze panes. Because what I actually want to do is I want to go into freeze panes and say freeze first column. And what that will do is that will then freeze column A. The problem is that if I go to say, let's say I go to C3, because what I want is I want to include A, B, and C. So I go and I'm in C. And I say freeze panes, freeze panes. So I think I've frozen it at C. When I scroll, I've actually frozen it not at C, but rather at B. So what you always want to do is you always want to freeze one pane to the right or one pane above whatever it is that you think it is. Right. So if I wanted to freeze A, B, and C, I need to do it at D. If I want to freeze 1, 2, and 3, I need to do it at 4. Not at 3. Because if I go to 3 and I say freeze panes, it will, when I scroll down, it'll freeze panes 1 and 2, not row 3. So if I want to do row 3, I need to do row 4. It's always one more than you think it is. And I cannot tell you how often this happens to me, but it happens to me all the time. All the time I forget and I say, oh, I want to freeze pane, you know, I want to freeze it at C3. So I go to C3. No, I don't want to go to C3. I want to go to D4.
When would you use this feature?
When you want to freeze your panes. So, for example, let's say I want to scroll to the right and see what my total is, and I forget what this is all about. Well, to do that, I could go in and I could say I want to freeze row A, so I go into, column A, so I go to column B and I say freeze panes. So now A is frozen so that I could say, oh yeah, commission was 118,000. That's why you want to freeze panes. Similarly, if I want to go up and down, and I want to remember, what month it was, if I scroll down here, I don't remember what the month was. So what I could do is I could say I wanted to freeze, if I tell it to freeze right here, again, I think I'm freezing it here, but in fact, I'm freezing it here and here. So where I actually want to freeze my pane is going to be is it here? Yeah, it's going to be here is where I want to freeze it, so that it will freeze this way. And then if I want to keep April, freeze there. If I wanted to only, if I wanted to keep this, it would be B4. Would freeze it so that to navigate through large data, it's useful to freeze your panes. The last thing the book wants to show you is so actually I did want to keep that frozen, so I'm going to keep my freeze panes there, so it'll freeze here and it'll freeze here. So by freezing it on B4, it will freeze up and down on the months and left to right on the revenues and gross margins and so on. So goal seeking is really, really cool. And what goal seeking allows you to do is goal seeking allows you to play around with these what if assumptions and come up with a different amount. So what we want to do is what did I do? I have my numbers look wrong to me. 390, 306 is correct. This is not correct. Why is this not correct? Oh, because I fill handled this all the way across. I didn't want to fill that all the way across. I wanted to fill this all the way down. That's why. There we go. That's why. But now I want to change my formatting so that my formatting is correct. So I want to copy that. Oops, I want to copy from here and copy these. Let's see, this one is supposed to be in the total. This is not supposed to have anything in it. There we go. And then this is supposed to be in total. Where are we? Cell styles total and cell styles total. There we go. Now I've got my data correct. I was gonna say, this doesn't look right. So what if I wanted to find out how to make it so that we get $100,000 instead of $92,788? So you're the accounting person, and the CEO comes to you and says, I want to find out how we can make it so that we could be $100,000. Crunch the numbers and make it so. You can do it in like 3 clicks using what if analysis. So that's what we're going to do. So to do the what if analysis, the first thing that we need to do is we need to go into the thingy that we want to change. So the thingy that we want to change is H16. So I go into H16, which is my operating income, and I want to change this to $100,000. But I can't just change it to $100,000. I have to make some changes in order to make it become $100,000. So to do that, I'm going to go into data, And in data, I'm going to go into what if analysis. And in a what if analysis, I'm going to go down to goal seek. So I go, and by the way, this is on page 188.
You selected the column.
No, just one cell,
Right.
just one cell, H16. And I do goal seek. And what it's saying in here is it says, okay, I want to set H16 to some value. So the value that I want to send it to is $100,000. So I want to change that to 100,000, right? Isn't that 100,000? Yeah. And then it says, okay, you want to do that. What cell do you want to change? So the cell that they're telling us to change is the kiosk rental. So if I go into the kiosk rental is currently 10%. So if in order to make it so that we get $100,000, instead of having our kiosk rental be 10%, it will be 8.18%. So if we change the kiosk rental to 8.18%, we would be able to get $100,000. And the boss says, great, let's change the kiosk rental to 8.18%. Okay, if you're typing or doing something else, I want you to stop and just look up at my screen, because this is really one of those things that you can do this on your own, but I want to show you a couple of other really cool things that you can do with this. So if I go in instead and I say, I don't really want to manipulate the kiosk rental, I want to change the bonus. So I go into what if analysis and I go into goal seek. And we still want it to be $100,000. So we say 100, 00, 1, 2, 3. Is that 100,000? Yeah, 100,000. I want to change what the bonus is. So I go into the bonus and I click OK. It changes it to $100,000. All I need to do to change that is to change the bonus from being $5,000 to being $3,197.19. And of course, the only people who are going to really be upset about this are, of course, the sales managers who want to get their sales bonus. But we can then get our $100,000. So that's one thing I could do. Another way I could do it is that I could go into the what if analysis, goal seek, and I could say make it 100,000, and change. What else could we change? We could change the commission from 30%. So we could say we want to change the commission from 30% to 28.18%. Or I could go in and I could say, what if analysis, goal seek, $100,000, changing what the sales revenue is for the bonus. So instead of it being minimum of $60,000 in order to get the bonus, all we need to do is change that to, it's calculating, trying to figure it out, trying to do it and stuff. And it found it. All we need to do to do that is make it be, instead of 60,000, make it $69,045.60. And then we'll get $102,000 in revenue. The point is that using goal seek, you can manipulate the data that are in your spreadsheet by modifying the rules that are being used to calculate your calculations. So if I go back to my my widget price, and I want to know what it could be, what the sales tax needs to be in order to make it be $20, then what I could do is I could go into data, what if analysis, goal seek. I want to make E2 to become 20 by changing the sales tax. And it calculates and says, change the sales tax to 33.33% and you'll get $20. Or again, I could go to Bob and I could say, you know, what does Bob need to do in order to get an A? Well, obviously he needs to get 90, but I could use goal seek to help figure that out if that's what I wanted. So the point is that goal seek can be used to help you manipulate and change your calculations. All right, the very last thing that I wanted to show you today was that you can restrict access to your data. And I've included this in the same spot where I included the stuff on calculating someone's age. It's in a unit called Protecting Sheets. And so what I've done on here is I've put in some names and put in some data. And what you need to do in order to restrict access is that by default, things are locked. So if I look at this cell here and I do Control-1 and I go to protection, it's locked. By default, every cell is locked. However, locking a cell doesn't do anything unless you add protection to it. So what you would need to do is first unlock the cells that you want to unlock, and then apply protection to the spreadsheet. And to apply protection to the spreadsheet, you go on Review and then Protect Sheet. And then you put in a password. So the example that I might do here is if I say enter your name, and then I want people to enter their name. And I want to have the time, the date and time, so that I know when they did this is equals now. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that only this cell can be edited. So I go to that cell and I unlock it. Every other cell is locked. If I go to this cell, it's locked. If I go to this cell, it's locked. If I go to this cell, it's locked. Now, right at the moment, locking a cell doesn't do anything. But if I go into Review and I say Protect Sheet, and I say the password is FOO, select lock cells. They can select lock cells and they can select unlock cells, and that's it. I click OK. It says please verify FOO. So now that I've done this, if I save it as I'm going to save it as foo so I don't forget what the password is. And I try to put something in, it says the cell or chart you're trying to change is the protected sheet. To make changes, unprotect the sheet. You might need a password. I go to here, can't. I go to here, can't. But I can go here. But I can't go here. So I think that is one of the really most useful things that you can do in Excel, because what this allows you to do is allows you to protect your document and not allow people to edit it once you've created it. Exactly. So if you want to share a spreadsheet with somebody and you want to make sure that they don't muck up your data, you can, send it to them. But before you send it to them, protect your sheet, and they won't be able change anything unless they figure out what your password is. Now, obviously, if you tell them what the password is, or you use a password like, password, then, they might be able to figure it out. But hopefully they won't, and that's what I wanted to show you. All right. So that is the end of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today. This is the end of the things that we're doing on this one. I think there's one more thing that they kind of wanted us to do, and that was in page layout, setting the print area so that it would print the way that we wanted to print, and you can go in and change again in your page setup. I showed you this yesterday, that if we go into page setup, that we can say fit and fit it to landscape, and it will always then be set so that it prints the way that you want it to print. But that's the end of the stuff that that we're doing today. Again, there's no class tomorrow because of 4th of July. And then next week on Tuesday, it's open lab time. So if you run into any issues with this assignment or the homework for this assignment, bring them on Tuesday, and either Matt or I will happily help you with all of that. Otherwise, on Wednesday, we will start talking about databases. Any global questions other than what's wrong with my screen? All right, have a safe and sane 4th, and we'll see you next time.